Welcome to Paul and Stephen, 21 Days with Paul and Stephen, the book that was psychographed by the medium Chico Xavier, and it was brought in by the spirit author Emmanuel, his mentor. This book is a great and fantastic way through which we can focus ourselves in our daily lives, especially after the elections in the United States. The Spirit Mentors have asked us to invite everyone to join us in this opportunity of doing this book club discussion here and directing our thoughts and feelings towards this new direction. What are we gonna do? Always be positive, okay? Hi Nina, good seeing you there. So where did we stop? Remember, we had the family of Jeziel / Stephen. Abigail, Jeziel were brother and sister. They have their father, the old Joshadeb. Great tragedy in the old Achaia, Greece. But remember, it wasn't Greece yet. It was actually part of the Roman Empire. And the rules were like the patricians. They were the ones creating their own rules and laws, and the Jewish people were enslaved. They were at the mercy of the patricians, the Romans at the time. So the family, Jeziel's family, really got in trouble, and now we have Jeziel, who became acquainted with the teachings of Jesus through Simon Peter, and became Stephen through Stephen himself, working on the teachings and embracing everyone. Hello friends, hi Felipe, hi John, hi Ana Luisa, thank you for joining us. We can feel the love, and we have our friends here live too. Mark and Carol, they are here with us. They are the hosts of Kardec Radio for kids and for teens, and they are kindly giving us the opportunity of doing this discussion with them. So we are here talking about the day in which Saul, later Paul, proud, he was a Pharisee. Oh yeah, oh, really? Was he a Pharisee? He was a Pharisee. Thank you for the love, Aldilson. And he is visiting the house of the way, the men of the way, and the women too, right? Men and women. And by the way, today we were in a beautiful event in Long Island, the suicide prevention event. And I remember at some point the spirit mentor, Joseph, bringing to us some discussions, and he said, when we talk about women's rights, it's not about a woman's talk, it's about humans talk. We got it. Thank you, Mentor Joseph, for your kind heart, right? So when we're talking here about Saul, he is completely he's deeply upset because Stephen is quite assertive. He's very he's so serene in his discussions, and this really made Saul become so upset to the point, and I'm reading here again, you can see because of the light. Can you see it now? I can even highlight. Yeah, I like the features in the ebook because you can highlight in your phone. It's fantastic. So, hi Nina, good evening, good to see you. The book is amazing, I agree. Hi Felipe from DC. So, Saul felt shaken in every fiber of his pride. Friends, how often do we feel shaken in our pride? That's the first quiz of the day or night, depending on where we are. Hi Rita, first quiz. How often, this is inner knowledge, do we feel shaken in the fiber of our pride? How often? Never. Rarely. Sometimes. Often. Very, very often. the more we feel it, the more we put ourselves in trouble. You see what Saul does to himself, not to Stephen, to himself. Thank you, John. We're together. Remember, we're one family, one Spiritist family. And Saul gazed at Stephen with near hatred. And we ask, why? What for? What did he do? He took everything personal. But the preacher, not a preacher, it's just like a way of saying that Stephen was giving his talk, he responded with a serene and amicable look. You see here, let's put a pause again. We have Stephen with complete control of his emotions. Some people think that emotional intelligence is about not feeling any difficult emotion. No. Emotional intelligence is about feeling them, but knowing that we're feeling, knowing that it comes from us or from others, and knowing what to do next. So it's okay. But Stephen was a step ahead. He was not reacting any longer. And that's another point for us. How often do we react to everything? Do we have to react to everything people say and do? Because some people feel like it. And that's why we are still in the animal instinctive level. But we need to really grow stronger and become human beings, putting mind over matter. Being angels is another level. We don't know what it is. We know that being humans, we need to put mind over matter and control. And if we can't do it now, but at least we plan ahead. And as Emmanuel says, maybe now I make a mistake, but I know I made a mistake. And then tomorrow I think about not making a mistake, but I still do it. And tomorrow before I do it, I think about it, don't do it. And then I don't even think about it. It's just good. Everything's all right. So it's about effort and repetition, right? Do we feel it? So, hatred from Saul. What was Stephen's reaction? Zero, no reaction. He took action. He responded with serene and friendliness. He was friendly. So this week or this night, or this day, tomorrow, we have an opportunity. People do something and we ask, is this shaking the fiber of my pride? Is this by any chance something that I need to react to? How can I not react? How can I do it? So the young doctor of the law says, Emmanuel, he felt so shaken inside of him. On the following day, he created a plot against Stephen. He asked his friend, one of his friends, to go and accuse Stephen of blasphemy. And his friend said, oh, that's easy, I can do it in a snap. And, he did that because Stephen refused to argue with him in the Sanhedrin. He refused once and twice and 3 times, and then he created a plot. He was seeing Stephen as an enemy. How can we be religious and see other religious people as enemy? This is really twisted. Really twisted. And it's very interesting because even for us Spiritists, it's an invitation again and again. Jesus was not Spiritist. Label. He was not Christian. Well, but he was the Christ, but not Christian. He was not Christian. He was Jewish in that life. Do you appreciate Judaism? We need to ask us this question to us. It seems to be silly, but it's very important. We need to know the roots of ourselves. Jesus was so wise that he knew how to appreciate those who came before him. And he said, I didn't come to destroy the law. I came to fulfill it. You know, in this, yeah, I know you like it. Me too. Right? Yeah, it's very, very interesting, this observation. And it's something that is about the structure of the mind, the human mind. When we go to Bert Hellinger's in Germany, the man who created this new therapy, which is fantastic, it's about systemic family constellation. We learn something that is very in tune with the teachings of Spiritism. Only when we appreciate the foundation of our lives, parents, family, ancestors, we create healthy roots. As if we were a tree, the trunk of our tree is the relationship with our parents, and the roots are how we see it, how we feel it, our attitude before it. Dr. Ana Moreira very kindly shared that with me, and I kept reading it, and it's fascinating. So Jesus very wisely is in sync with this kind of attitude. And I'm not saying he came later, I'm just saying what he did and what Bert Hellinger's unveils therapeutically brings to us a very important realization. We're only gonna blossom in our lives when we appreciate the works of the people who came before us for generations. So for example, in the United States of America, if you and I appreciate the history of this country, then dig deeper, study the history of this country, and you can begin in the book On the Way to the Light by Emmanuel through Chico Xavier, when we get to know that the United States of America is blessed as any other country, but it has a specific role to be the brain. What is to be the brain? To be the loving command of the planet. That's how it is. So if we learn more about what has happened here, appreciate the history, we're going to be able to set healthier grounds for this nation. So go to the museums. Go to HBO and watch John Adams, the colonial transformation of the independence of this country. Let us rescue the ideals of the founding mothers and fathers of the United States of America and appreciate it. And even if you don't live in the United States, it's the foundation for you too. Because if a brain is not healthy, the body collapses. We can't fight against the brain. The brain is very important. Not only the whole body, but the brain is the brain. We need to love it. Send love to the brain. Send oxygen to the bloodstream that irrigates the brain. So right now we are learning that Jesus came to make us also appreciate everyone who came before us, the hard works of theirs. Hi, Sergio. Hard work. And we come to fulfill what is next. Jesus was so humble. He never said, yeah, I came here to destroy this law because it's not working. Law of Moses, down. I'm going to create a new law because now I know, blah, blah, blah. That's pride. And Jesus was not like this. He came to fulfill the law. Let's read it in the Gospel according to Spiritism. First revelation, second revelation, third revelation, and then in the Genesis again by Kardec. It's all about the fulfillment of God's law. That doesn't come through one person alone. It doesn't come through one people alone. It comes through the no corners of the world, right? There are no corners, so we can't say the four corners of the world because it's not a square. Thank God the earth is not a square. It's a beautiful round planet. So throughout the planet, we have this beauty coming through throughout everybody. Nobody's privileged. Even Jesus, he shared the marvels he brought to us by putting together a team. We work as a team. Okay? But we fulfill what we have to fulfill. We can't wait for everybody to do what they have to do, so then we do our part. See Jesus, he did his part, and he called other ones, and he gave time for each and every person to fulfill it, but he didn't wait for everybody to be on the same page so he could fulfill it. Got it? That's how it works. That's the law. That's the law. Okay? So, since Stephen was, refusing, so he found a way to put him, against the wall. And his friend Nehemiah, Saul's friend, accused Stephen of blasphemy. So now he was supposed to come to the Sanhedrin and answer questions, be questioned. How did Stephen receive the news? How do you think? Was he desperate? Was he upset? Was he worried? No. Was he afraid? No. Emmanuel says, full of hope. What? Full of hope. Stephen prayed to Jesus not to forsake him, so that he could bear witness to the richness of his evangelical faith. What a man. Stephen awaited the event with faithfulness and joy. No. Is that possible? He awaited the event with faithfulness and joy. It's as if somebody's calling you to court. You're being accused of a crime, and you're awaiting the event with faithfulness and joy. Why is Emmanuel describing this much detail for us? As an educator, Emmanuel is giving us an opportunity to learn. Remember, neuroscience already discovered we have mirror neurons in our brain. We're beings who learn from one another because we're social beings, okay? And since we're social beings, we learn by watching others. And not only by watching, by reading books. Neuroscience proved in 2015 that if you read books, you can change the way you behave and change your pathways as well. So it's a phenomenal fact that we have in Spiritism hundreds of books. These books are not blah, 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 blah. They are true coaches. Next time you want a coach, buy a Spiritist book. It's cheaper. Tell you the truth. It's cheaper, right? It's much cheaper. It's like $15, $20, and you can have this coach forever. And if you buy on the phone, forever, really forever, as long as you bring it to the next version you buy. But it's something we carry with us, and then we are like upset, and we read, Stephen awaited the event with faithfulness and joy. Picture it. Because once we picture it, our brains are forming the pathway. Once we're forming it, we're shaping our brains, we're refining our connections, we're creating new synapses. It's likely that sooner or later, that is going to manifest in our behavior. It takes time, though. We need to know. It takes time. To manifest in behavior, we really need that our synapses be very refined, okay? It's like sculpting the brain. We're sculpting, but to see it well, we need details, right? It's like when you're drawing like What is that gonna be? Oh, first you're guessing. But when you have a skillful artist, you can tell by the details the preciousness of what is portrayed in the picture. And that's what it is, effort and repetition. The more we read these books, the more we're sculpting the brains. It's not only about reading, I agree. If you say, but Vanessa, reading alone doesn't do the deal. You write in the book Action and Reaction. We have an intellectual. Remember when the judging spirit came along? Actually, the book Liberation, not Action, Reaction. Liberation by André Luiz. The judging spirits are selecting the groups of people that are going to be, quote unquote, punished. Okay, because they are not very evolved spirits. And they have a group of spirits that are considered to be greedy. They discarnated, they're greedy spirits. And then one of them raises his hand and say, I am not a greedy person. And then the one of the judges said, yes, you were. No, I was not. I was an intellectual. I only wrote books. I never had any money. And they were like, actually, you were greedy because you knew a lot and you never shared. So we're saying read the books, but share, not only with words, but as St. Francis often said, it's about doing the deeds, and then if you need, add the words. But you know, right now with this book, we have to speak, so there's no other way. There's no other way. So, chapter 6 begins before the Sanhedrin. So it's the Jewish temple, and actually the court, where they judge people. On the appointed day, let us feel it, let us picture, like a movie. On the appointed day, the great hall of the highest Jewish fraternity was packed with a veritable crowd of believers and curious onlookers, eager to witness the first debate between the priests and the pious, strange men of the way. The assembly was composed of the most aristocratic and educated men that Jerusalem could put together. Beggars, however, had no access, even though it was deemed a public meeting. The Sanhedrin put its most distinguished personalities on display. In the mixture of priests and teachers of Israel were the most prominent men of Pharisaism. There were also representatives from all the synagogues. Aware of Stephen's intellectual acuity, Saul had wanted to confront him against a backdrop where his own talents would be in control, as opposed to the humble church of the followers of Nazarene carpenter. Deep down, now this is the highlight, deep down, Saul's purpose was rooted in an arrogant demonstration of superiority, nourishing at the same time the inner hope of conquering Stephen for the hosts of Judaism. Friends, let's make a meditation here, reflection. How can we ever use a temple for a debate? How? Friends, we can't use spiritist centers or spiritist meetings for debates. It's not a place. No churches should ever be a place for debate. For, this struggle of the ego. And Saul, though he wanted to follow God and the teachings of Moses, he was still killed by his ego. See, deep down, his purpose was rooted in an arrogant demonstration of superiority. Okay, we understand him. He didn't know Jesus yet. But we do. or at least we think we do. How often do we do things to show we're superior to others? What is important is the intention. Maybe we may sound like we want to be superior to others. The problem is that when we really want to be superior. Hi, Daisy. Thank you, Sergio, for your love, my friend. And you're also non-stop. But here we have, consequently, he prepared the meeting with all the requisites for making an impression on Stephen's senses. What a waste of time. We're not judging. We're just saying, how often do we also waste time like Saul did? Not only his time, but the time of everybody else. It was packed with people. And I wonder, how often do we waste the time in our lives and the lives of people? How often? Often. Stephen was appearing as a man called to defend himself against the accusations imputed to him, and not as a common prisoner forced to settle accounts with justice. Thus, upon studying the situation, he insisted that the Galilean apostles not accompany him, taking into consideration not only the need for them to remain with their suffering wards, but also the possibility of a serious clash if the followers of the way were to appear with him. His firm objective was to safeguard the purity and freedom of the gospel of Christ. Now, you see how Stephen was completely he didn't think of himself. Like Chico Xavier. Chico Xavier, when he was asked to talk about Spiritism in an interview that we know as the Pinga Fogo in the 70s. Remember, dictatorship was happening, etc. All the people who knew him said, I remember the reporter, Saulo Gomes, he's a friend of ours, and he said, the most striking part of it all was to see how concerned he was if he would create any problems for Spiritism and for Jesus. That was his concern. But remember, Chico in the 70s was already Chico Xavier, the one we know. How could he think that he would ever be a troublemaker for Spiritism? But since he was humble, since he was already, aware of the traps of darkness, he was truly cautious and vigilant. So we need to be cautious and vigilant too, especially in these hard times. Today we're still in Long Island, but we were in the event Suicide Prevention. Many beautiful talks, all of them. And at the end, Josara Korngold, very wisely, and we could tell she was deeply inspired, she shared with all of us how vigilant we need to be at the current times. Very vigilant, because now we have the final battle between good and evil on earth. And I say final battle figuratively, it may take centuries, but we're just saying it is the final battle. And darkness is really desperate and trying to neutralize those who are already working for the light. So if you, my friend, have already decided to walk this pathway, remember, do not stop, especially now. Do the opposite. Work 3 times harder. That's exactly what Mentor Joseph told us at the very night we got to know of the outcome of the election in the United States. He said, Vanessa, prepare yourself, because now we're going to work 3 times harder. And I asked why? Because the forces of darkness are going to try to put pressure onto everybody. Nobody's going to be spared. And if you want to be in the umbrella of protection, work hard. And if you love the people, share the same message. And that's why we're here. We're here because we're fully aware that from now to the future, if we really want to shift things on the earth, we need to push harder. You know, it's like driving. 1, 2, like the gears, you're changing it. And then like now, whoop, we have to go, because we're in the pathway. Can't stop. There's no time for entertainment anymore. This is our entertainment. This is our fun time. This is our joy. This is the joy. This is the joy. So, Saul, in this case, was consumed by his ego, but Stephen was not. He was not even thinking about himself. He was thinking about others and Jesus' teachings. How often we sacrifice friends and family because we are afraid. Like Joshadeb. He didn't think of his family and the consequences. He thought of himself alone. How many people create problems for their own family and friends because they are driven by their ego? We can't do that any longer. Okay? So, when he was there, I'm not going to describe the whole dialogue, but the session began with a ceremony, just so we feel it. There's a lot of ceremony because it's just a waste of time. We know it. You know, when we work, we go to the point. Upon opening the hearing, the high priest announced that in accordance with his own wishes, Saul had been chosen to question the accused and ascertain the extent of his guilt in defiling the sacred principles of the Jewish race. Okay? With an imperious gesture, Saul now ordered, this man, or the high priest, ordered Saul, who ordered Stephen, to approach the center of the lavish room. Again, for all of us, we don't need fancy spiritist centers. We need to keep it simple. The direction is always simplicity. In the gospel according to Spiritism, one of the virtues that is always pointed out is simplicity. Simplicity is not lack of hygiene. It's not lack of the elements that a home or a center needs. It's simply lack of the superfluous. We don't need gold. I remember in the Spirit side of Virginia, somebody saying, oh, I miss the fancy church. I said, you know, you're never going to find it here in Spiritist centers. We don't need it. We don't need large centers. We don't need fancy walls. We need beautiful, cozy, simple, where people feel at home. Love to be home. And home is where the heart is. Right? Carol and Mark, they know better than me about that. Yeah. And the young men from Corinth took the scene surrounding him, considering the contrast between the assembly and the former one at his poor church, when he had been compelled to become acquainted with this highly obstinate antagonist. Now, let me go through here a little bit of the dialogue, just so we feel the drama, because for us it's a lesson. Can you imagine? Can you visualize it? It's hard. Saul began to sternly and harshly interrogate Stephen. As you can see, you have been accused of blasphemy, slander, and sorcery before the most respectable authorities. However, before any decision is reached, the tribunal wishes to know your origin in order to ascertain any rights that might assist you at this moment. Are you perchance from any Israelite family? Well, Stephen is a human. He went pale, thinking of the problems that might rise in case of a full identification he was called for, but he answered firmly, I belong to the children of the tribe of Issachar. The doctor of the law was taken aback, slightly by surprise, imperceptible to the assembly, but continued, As an Israelite, you have the right to freely object to my questions. However, I must make it clear that your status will not exempt you from heavy punishment if you persevere in expounding the crass errors of a revolutionary doctrine whose founder was condemned to the infamous cross by the authority of this very tribunal where the most venerable sons of the tribes of God pontificate. Furthermore, in surmising your origin by supposition, I invite you to argue openly with me at our first encounter in the assembly of the men of the way. I close my eyes to the misery surrounding me to analyze only your gifts of intelligence. However, you displayed a strange excitement of mind, and perhaps, owing to sorceries whose influences are obvious there, you kept oddly silent in spite of my reiterated appeals. Your inexplicable attitude gave occasion to the Sanhedrin to consider the present denouncement of your name as an enemy of our ordinances. You are hereby obligated to answer all appropriate and necessary questions, and I hope you realize that the title of Israelite will not free you from the punishment reserved for traitors of our cause. He began the interrogation. Why did you refuse my invitation to argue when I honored your sermon in church of the way with my presence? Now let's begin feeling the lesson for us. Stephen becomes a role model for us of inner emotional administration and true Christian attitude. Stephen's eyes flashed as if inspired by a divine power, and answered in a firm voice without revealing the emotion that had come over him. Pause. When we go to the Medium's book by Kardec, in one of the items, because the Medium's book is divided in items. In the Spirit's book we have questions and answers. In the Medium's book we have items. But some parts are questions and answers, questions that Kardec made to the spirits through the mediums of the time. And there's one in which he asks, what are the conditions for the higher spirits to actually manifest themselves, the high spirits, the good ones? And they say, selflessness and humility. No wonder, Stephen, at this moment that Emmanuel is describing to us, he was receiving the help from the on high. He was humble and he was selfless. He knew it was not personal to him. That's why he was hopeful to fulfill God's will. He was not taking it personal. So this is the prevention to fear. It's not personal to us. Okay? It's towards the works of the light on the earth. And if you're a light worker, you're going to be charged. You're going to be challenged. You're going to be accused. You're going to be misunderstood, etc., etc. But it's not because of you alone, though we have our past. We know it. How does he answer? The Christ whom I serve recommended to his disciples that they avoid at all times the incitement of quarrels. As for having honored my humble sermon with your presence, I thank you for your undeserved interest. But with David, I prefer to consider the fact that our soul should boast in the Lord, since we have nothing of goodness within us if God does not help us with the greatness of His glory. Wow, huh? Carol, Mark. So, next time people say, let's come here and discuss Spiritism. Thank you, but no thank you. We don't go there. And from now on, in these times that are very trying, you tell your children too. You don't have to react to what people say and do or even question you. Like Marcelo Medeiros wisely shared with us when he was talking at the suicide prevention event, he mentioned about how we take people's opinions of us. Through his own experience, he learned we respect, but it doesn't really matter. In the sense of it doesn't define us. People don't know. No wonder Jesus said, Father, forgive them, because they don't know. People don't know us. They don't live with us. They are not inside of us. Even those who live with us don't know us. And vice versa. And vice versa. We don't. Because we have our little world. And we have a hard time knowing what's in the mind. You know why? Because we are a system. You know? That's why it's so hard. It's like one is a solar system and the other is another system. And we're in contact, but there are so many players. We have incarnates and discarnates together. Remember when Kardec asked the spirits, if we're often influenced by the spirits more than we imagine, remember in the Spirit's book, if you imagine this much, it's more. They said, what are the kinds of spirits that are always surrounding us? And they said, 4 types. 4 categories doesn't mean 4 spirits, maybe 6,000, okay? It can be 12,000, you never know. It can be 1,000,000, I don't know. But what we know is 4 types. 1, protecting spirits. They're superior to us. 2, family spirits. They can be superior or inferior or like us. But they like us, they have a history with us. 3, spirits of affinity. They like what we like, but we don't have history together yet. So if you like reading this book, they like reading the books, they are spirits of affinity. If you like drinking, they like drinking, and then you become friends with them. Okay? And 4th, the famous obsessors. We only think of obsessors. We're more obsessed with obsessors than they are with us. That's the matter, right? They're more obsessed. We're more obsessed with them than they are with us, because we're constantly blaming them from everything. And you know, in several books, André Luiz shows to us that many of the spirits who create problems for us, they're family spirits. Look at the book Action and Reaction. The guy who kills his 2 brothers, then he becomes a victim of his own brothers. They're family spirits, but they're troublemakers because they don't forgive, because the brother was a troublemaker too. But we're just saying that not only those who become true obsessors are always around us. Family spirits, they may like us, but they may not like your sister or your brother. Look at the book Sex and Destiny. Marina and Marita, they're sisters. But you know, Marina, she was like very strange. She stole the fiancé of the sister. And later, when Marita is in the hospital in a coma, she's just thinking, oh, my sister Marina, she stole my fiancé. I don't like you. I hate you. There is a family spirit by her, connected to her father. Okay? He likes the father of Marita, who is sisters with Marina. He hears Marita thinking of it. She doesn't even know that this spirit is around. He takes her side and starts avenging for her. She didn't even ask. You know what happens next? Marina gets into a psychiatric state. She's taken to a psychiatric hospital. Who became the obsessor? A family spirit. Family spirit. Because he's not involved. Because he's taking everything like competition. Really? You're thinking like this just because I'm different, then we are enemies. Do we have to be enemies just because we think differently? Do we? No. Right, Karen? No. We shouldn't. In the light of this lesson that was thrown in his face, Saul of Tarsus, I love the description of the body language here, the emotional body language. Saul of Tarsus bit his lip in rage and spite. I'm not gonna enact here because it's not gonna look good. Okay? But think of this. That's something to learn. You know, people who are experts in emotional body language, they can tell. Trying now to avoid any personal allusion so as not to fall into another situation as before, and continued. You are accused of blasphemy, slander, and sorcery. And Stephen calmly, please allow me to ask, in what sense? Blasphemy when you proclaim the carpenter of Nazareth as a savior. Slander when you degraded the law of Moses, denying the sacred principles that rule our destinies. Do you confirm all this? Do you accept these accusations? Friends, I remember when I used to work at University of Maryland, I never shared anything about spiritism because it didn't pertain to the environment. But one day, the treasurer of my department, he said something that was Christian-like, and I said, oh, that's beautiful, you're saying that. And he asked me, are you Christian? I said, yeah. And he said, oh, so let's have lunch and talk about it. And I knew he was a newborn evangelical person. And I was like, ay, 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 mamma mia. And I asked Joseph, what do I do? He said, you know, just go there, but go there to learn something. You're going to learn a lot of things there. Be careful. And okay, we're seated. He was like an older man, adorable person, very ethical. First thing he asked, it sounded just like this. Of course, he was not accusing me, but he was like, first question, do you accept Jesus as your Savior? And I was like, I think he's my guide and model. And he was like, oh, that's an interesting take on it. Yeah, for me, he's the governor of the planet. And then he kept asking again and again questions, and I kept learning about the same tightness, the same box that we see here with Saul of Tarsus. You know what? This is Christianity in the United States of America. Are you ready for the dialogue? Because we Spiritists think we're ready. We need to shape it up. It's not easy. It's not simple. Many people are still taking the scriptures, as a friend of mine told me today, as ashes, dead words that don't actually change a bit of our lives. For Paul, Jeziel, as a Jewish, he knew that God was loving. For Paul, he doesn't see that loving God. He sees a God that separates him from everybody else. It's about perspective. As the first speaker today, Christine, talked to us, it's about perspective. Perspective. So Stephen replied, I hold to my belief that Christ is the Savior promised by the Eternal One through the teachings of the prophets of Israel, who wept and suffered over many centuries, for transmitting to us the sweet joy of that promise. As for the second accusation, I believe that it proceeds from a mistaken interpretation of my words. I have never ceased venerating the law and the sacred scriptures, but I consider the gospel of Jesus to be their divine complement. The former are the work of man, the second is God's wages for his faithful workers. So are you of the opinion that the carpenter is greater than the great lawgiver? Moses is justice by revelation, but Christ is living and everlasting love. Seriously, go read On the Way to the Light. That's the way it is. It's teamwork. Each one has a role. That's all that is. Justice and love complement the love of God. Moses is justice by revelation. Christ is living in everlasting love. Of course, love is love, but justice is also important. Remember the definition of justice for Spiritism. Beautiful third part of the Spirit's book. If we want to know the constitution of the soul, immortal soul, we need to read at least the third part of the Spirit's book, the Divine Laws, because it rules our lives. If we read it, very likely we're going to receive less citations, less tickets by our own conscience, because we're going to be more compliant to the laws of God. We're going to know what to do. For example, justice. What is the definition of justice? Law of justice, charity, and love in the Spirit's book. Kardec asks, what is the definition of justice according to the Spirits? To respect everyone's rights. Meaning, if we have a president-elect that goes there and says something, we respect. Doesn't mean we're going to agree, but we respect. We're not going to curse him because of it. We may be like, oh, I'm going to pray more for him now. If I have a way to take action to help, I will. If not, I'm going to keep praying. I'm going to be trusting his divine nature. But he has the right to do whatever he likes. Not saying we're just going to agree, but we have to respect. As much as Jesus respected Caesar's rights to do crazy orgies, crazy things. To date, everything is happening and God respects us in every single decision we make. And God is God. This is justice. Respecting everyone's right. When we respect, we give an opportunity for the people to be him or herself as much as we want to be ourselves. It's not easy, right? We're still in that battlefield inside of us. We want to make justice with our own hands. But Jesus comes with love and says, let's balance it out. As we are marching towards the wrap-up of today, in the dialogue between both, and I recommend to you read chapter 6, because in each and every question and answer, Stephen is going to give us lessons for our wild hearts who are constantly reacting to the stimulus of the world. Through Stephen, it's important to read from this perspective as an apprentice of emotional management. Learning not only through the words that Stephen says, but through the description of his emotional body language, how we deal with these challenges of life. People come with their perspective. It doesn't mean anything for us in regards to, do I need to react or I'm gonna be chicken? Remember the movie Back to the Future? You do, I do too. Love it, me too. I know, lots of love here. But remember when the main character of the movie, he was doing well until the other guy, the bad guy, called him chicken. And then he lost his mind. We can't be like this. We need deeply to learn with this. Questions are made, accusations. So bit his lip in fury, and emphasizing his severe attitude as a judge. He continued, "You slander Moses. I await your answer." And this time Stephen gave him a meaningful look. Learning with Stephen. Firm. Jesus said, "Yes, yes, no, no." And uttered, "Why do you await my answer while you obey an arbitrary criterion? The gospel does not know the complications of casuistry. I do not disdain Moses, but I must nevertheless proclaim the superiority of Jesus Christ. You can pass sentence and prefer anathemas against me. However, somebody must work with the Savior in reestablishing the truth above all else, in spite of the most painful consequences." He's sacrificing his ego to work with Jesus. And that's where we're going to stop, because tomorrow, Sunday, we'll be here, but a little earlier because we have to travel back to Virginia from Long Island. So tomorrow, exceptionally, we're going to be here at 9 a.m., God willing. We'll be here 9 a.m. Exceptionally tomorrow, Monday, we resume at 11 a.m. But we're going to wrap up chapter 6, march to chapter 7. The quiz of the evening for those who are in the East Coast, or for those who are in one of the hemispheres, the others probably this morning. We ask ourselves here as we are learning, how much do we offer the sacrifice of our ego to work with Jesus? And why is this important at all? Stephen is a lesson for us. Time has come. Let us work together. We're supposedly the workers of the last hour. We don't want to miss the job because it's already the last hour. It's either now or never. It could be a song. It's now or never. Okay, friends, let's wrap it up. It's already midnight. And lots of love to all of you. Let's stay together. Stay in tune, because Jesus is working non-stop for us. How about giving our time, which is actually God's, to work with Him too and make earth a little better. Big kiss, big hug of gratitude to Karen and Mark for their kindness, and until tomorrow, God willing.